Moving beyond the basics with VLOOKUP. To kick off this chapter, we're going to explore one of the absolute most popular functions in the entire Excel, the VLOOKUP function. Technically, VLOOKUP is categorized as a lookup and reference tool. If you head over to the Formulas ribbon and check the Lookup and Reference drop-down menu, you will find it sitting right at the bottom of the list. If you hover over it to read the screen tip, you get a clear definition of what it actually does. It looks for a specific value in the leftmost column of a table and then returns a value in the same row from a column you specify. That might sound a bit abstract, so let's look at our data to see what that means in practice. In this worksheet, I've got a fairly large data set regarding inventory records. Column A holds the product ID titles, column B has the country, and as we move across, we have the product name, opening stock, and finally the price total in column I. What we want to build here is a system where we can simply type a product ID into cell L2, and Excel will automatically pull the correct country, product name, opening stock, and cost price from that big list. This is the textbook scenario for using VLOOKUP. Configuring the lookup value and table array. The one absolute rule VLOOKUP relies on is that the item you are looking for, in this case the product ID in L2, must actually exist in your dataset. Let's try to pull back the country first. I'll click into the cell and type an equal sign followed by VLOOKUP. You'll see it pop up in the IntelliSense list, so you can just hit the Tab key to open the function. Now we need to step through the arguments, which are just the pieces of information Excel needs to make the formula work. The first requirement is the lookup value. This is the piece of data you already know, which you're using to find the data you don't know. For us, that's the product ID inside cell L2. We want to use a cell reference here rather than typing the name directly because we want this to be dynamic. Regardless of what product ID we type into L2 later, the formula should always look at that specific cell. I'll type a comma to lock that in and move to the next step. Next, Excel asks for the table array. Effectively, it's asking, where is the data? We need to tell it where to look. For this example, our table array is the main data set over on the left, so I'm going to select the entire table range. Once that is highlighted, we jump back up to the formula bar and hit comma again. Defining the column index number and range lookup. This next argument, the column index number, is a critical part of how VLOOKUP functions. You need to specify which column holds the information you want to get back. VLOOKUP counts columns from left to right. In our table, the product ID is column 1, the country is column 2, the product name is column 3, and so on. Since we are trying to return the country, our column index number is 2. I'll type a 2 and hit comma. Finally, we arrive at the range lookup argument. You might notice this argument is enclosed in square brackets in the tooltip. Whenever you see square brackets in Excel syntax, it means that part is optional, and you don't strictly have to enter anything. However, if you do hit comma, you see two choices, true or false. This asks whether you want an approximate match or an exact match. Since we want to find the exact product ID, ID_6, we need an exact match, which corresponds to the false argument. Using false is the most common way to use VLOOKUP. If you don't type anything here, since it is optional, the function is going to default to false. So I can just type false to be safe, close the bracket, and hit enter. And there it is. It pulls back Brazil. If we verify that against the table, we can see that that is correct. Using alternates for Boolean logic. Let's try this again to get the product name. I'll type equals VLOOKUP and hit tab. My lookup value is still L2. My table array is still that same block of data, which I will select using Control, Shift, and the down arrow. I'll hit comma to move on. This time, we want the product name. Counting from the left, the product name is in the third column, so my column index number is 3. Now for that final matching argument, we previously used false, but here's a handy tip. In Excel, a 0 represents false, and a 1 represents true. So instead of typing out the word, I can just put a 0 at the end. Or as I mentioned, I could leave it blank. I'll close the bracket and hit enter. We get a monitor, which matches the data perfectly. Streamlining references with tables. You might have noticed that selecting that cell range every single time is getting a little tedious. We can make our lives easier by turning the data into a named table. I'll click inside the data and press Ctrl-T, then click OK. Now that it's formatted as a table, I'll go up to the Table Design ribbon and rename it from Table 1 to Products and hit Enter. Now we can use that name in our formula. Let's pull back the opening stock. I can see by counting that opening stock is column number 4. I'll type equals VLOOKUP. The lookup value is still L2, but for the table array, I can just start typing products. You'll see it appear in the IntelliSense list, so I can tab to select it. Then I'll hit comma. The column index is 4. For the match type, I'm actually going to accept the default this time and not even type the final argument. I'll just hit enter. It works perfectly, returning 40. Utilizing the function arguments dialog box. Just to show you one more approach, you don't always have to type everything manually. You can use the function arguments dialog box. Go to the Formulas tab, click Insert Function, and search for VLOOKUP. Once you find it, double-click to open the window. Now you have a form to fill out. For lookup value, I'll click L2. For table array, I'll type products. For column index number, we want the cost price total, which is column 9. And for range lookup, we want an exact match, so I'll type false. Click OK, and we get 25,000. The beauty of this setup is that it is fully dynamic. If I go back to cell L2 and change the product ID to ID_7 and hit enter, all 4 results update instantly to reflect that new product. If I type ID_10, the results change again to match. That is your essential guide to performing a basic VLOOKUP with exact matching.